Ladies and gentlemen, officially the hardest part I've done in a long time. That spring is no joke, but we are in. Previously, we did a disassembly of the AK12. I also have done a separate video of the camo kits that I sell separately. And the camo kits come like this with a sticker and everything that goes with it. And I also include a blade. But we did that video, so what I have now is a completed one that we're going to go through the reassembly process with. So let's go ahead and get into it. So what we have here is a black, gray, and gold camo with some gray accessories. This is the only part that I've painted. The rest of it we're going to leave black, and it'll have some black accents. So what we're going to do now is start putting everything back together. As you can see, I have all my parts bagged, which is pretty much what I normally do. I already reassembled the mag. It's pretty self-explanatory, but obviously you just put it in at a curve. And then this piece I did find to be a little challenging, and the only reason is because this pin, when you depress this pin to pop it off, it's attached to the whole piece in here, and so it doesn't like to come back up very hard. It's very light. So that took a little bit of work just to get it to seat in that pocket so that this doesn't pop off. But aside from that, it's really simple. You just got to work it. I did find that there is there's a little tube right there that looks like a screw would go in it, but I was able to use that to actually pull, kind of turn and pull up, and that's what actually pulled this into the pocket. So that worked great with this little punch. Anyway, there's the mag. Looks really good in gray. So let's get to work here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull these pieces off and get this out of the way. We're gonna start with the stock. I have all the parts to that in here. The stock's gonna be, it's such a simple little thing, but it has a lot of parts. And so bear with me, we're gonna go through this together. And actually had pieces go everywhere with this one because there's so many little bitty ones. And you have a detent and a spring, and this is your detent. It goes up inside here. This piece goes in this channel like so, and then we need a little pin. It's going to go in this hole. This is the pin that doesn't have any knurled knob on it. So we're just got to get it in the hole. Now the challenge here, and this is where I ran into a challenge taking it apart too, is you have to be careful because there's a spring in there. Let's see if we can get an angle on that. There you go. You can see the spring. So what we have to do is push the spring back there like that. I'm going to seat the pin and try to get the pin in front of the spring. Let's see if I'm successful. Then you run into the spring is trying to push the pin out of the pocket on the other side. So you just kind of work it so that it goes through the other hole. And it is a little bit of a challenge. There we go, got it. Cool. Okay, so you just got to work it. It's not in there hard at all. It's really just retained by the spring. And then you have your release. Cool. Okay, the stock buffer goes on. You move that out of the way and this slides right into place. It's adjustable like so. So it can actually, on this particular model, this thing will fit in multiple places, which will give you a rise. And it's kind of a cool feature, but sometimes it'll come lowered like this in the packaging and people don't understand why it's not there, and that's because they don't know about that little thing. And you can see you can go in different directions. So that's that. All right, so now we have the buffer tube detent. And we're going to slide it in, and we're going to try to get the angle in there. All right, I had to get this hole lined up here for the detent that goes up inside right here. So I just have to get that lined up. So be careful and keep that where it's supposed to be. Otherwise, you have to just go in there with a pick and rotate it. All right, so we get this up in here. We're going to take our little pin, the short, oop, that stays over there. The short pin is for this lower one. So we just need to line up our hole. Drop the pin in there like that. And then line up that hole. See there, you can, oh, moved it. There you go. I'll line that up. And then I'm going to make sure, yeah, see everything there, that should work for us. And then you'll see your detent there. Okay. Then, actually, you know what, let me punch these in so I don't accidentally drop them. I'm gonna just give them a little tap so they stay in place. So I want to make sure that they're going through where they're supposed to go on the other side. And I'm using the softer end of my hammer so I don't scratch. This one, you want to be careful because if it doesn't go through the hole, you can actually split the grip. So I just want to make sure it's actually going through on both sides. Which I found previously that you have to be careful to make sure that it does line up. I think we're in. There we go. So the trick to this, in case you have an issue, because sometimes it does get a little tricky, is this piece will sit like at an angle this way, ever so slightly. And so if you just go pounding on this side without making sure that this side is twisted properly, you're going to literally bend the side of this out. So you just want to be careful there. So now that I got those in place, I'm just going to give them a very gentle little tap to make sure they're fully seated. And that's fully seated. That's fully seated. And take note that the knurled sides were on this side. Okay. Now this one, not hard. You just have to, again, we're dealing with a spring and we're dealing with a little detent. The hole, the short side of the hole goes up in there. And so we just have to make sure we keep a hold of this. And we're lining up the hole like that. I get it in there. And once it's in, you're good to go. You just want to make sure it's in all the way. Cool. And then we're going to tap it. Actually want to use a different punch. This is a round tip punch, which is great, but I want to make sure I'm not sliding off the end with this round tip, so I'm going to use a flat punch. It's so hard to find a good angle on some of these things because their shape is so small. And I just want to make sure that it is fully seated. There we go. Now we have a nice functioning piece. All right, so the way this works, in case you didn't know, is your buffer tube goes in there and you have to basically pull this out like that to get your buffer tube to seat. So we're good. So that's good. That's all put together. Now, let's get the grip out of the way. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this. This part's easy. I'll get this done. Thanks for sticking with me. I like taking my time so that everybody can follow along. I know some of y'all are more adept than others, so I want to make sure I can help everybody. So again, just like we took it off, it has to go on from this side because it'll get hung up on the other side. So that's it. We're going to do that. Most of the screws on this, there you go, nice firm pressure, but don't over tighten. That's that. It's actually going to go up in the box now. All right, let's get moving to here and put this in place. I have one tiny little screw, and this is the one that I mark just so that I remember that I had it, because it's all by itself, you know. This is another Phillips head. This would be easier if I was using the magnetic screwdriver, but I don't have it handy. And we just want to make sure this is tight. You can adjust this depending on, you know, how snug it is to make sure it locks into place. Cool. Cool, let's go ahead and get this stock put back on it. Sorry, the buffer tube put back on it. And here we go. Okay. So, as we discussed before, this goes in your little spring here. Oh, if you were watching the first video, we talked about the spring being down in there, and I didn't take it out. I sprayed it. Everything is great. It works just fine. So no issues at all. That's after blasting it and everything. So I'm going to slide that in place like that. So before we can drop that pin in, we got to get this into here. And the little hook goes towards the body. And we're going to get all of this back in there like that. Okay. And we drove the pin out through the top. So we're going to basically just have to work. This is the only thing, like, is the only part that makes this more complicated, is you have to get it in place to get the pin to drop all the way through. Oh, come on. And it just doesn't like to sit perfectly, so we're just going to work it until I can find that hole for that guy. Come on, baby. There we go. Oh, okay. So you just got to take your time, because you got to get it through these two and then that one, which it moves, and then through those two. So the moving part just adds a little extra level of difficulty. No big deal. You want to find a place where this thing will sit nice and solid for you, because it's going to want to rotate. Very cool. We're in. That's nice and tight again. Beautiful. Okay. These come apart. And as you can see, I like to make sure I get paint down in there, but with these, once I start doing camo, they go together and they stay together. So you always have a separate color in here, which is actually kind of nice looking, nice and clean. Cool. Let's get this going. People always ask me about my shop space, and I sold my house, which means I sold my dedicated shop space. And now in the new place, just in my garage, which is where I usually am, there's currently 86 in here, which is nice and cool. It's a cooler day. It's 85 out. It's normally, yesterday it was 95 degrees. So it's interesting. The temperature is starting to change, which is really relief to me, because it makes working in the garage a whole lot easier. All right, so here we go. So we talked about these pieces before, and Again, we're using, oh, that's the 1.5. That is not the one we're using. We're using this one, which is the T6. I'm actually going to tighten this screw because it's feeling a little loose for me. So let's get that. Yeah. I don't want to over tighten it and strip these screws out because they're so little. But I like everything to be snug. Cool. Okay, so we talked about just 2 screws here. If you wanted to remove these, if I wanted to take this part off and spray it to match or something like that, I could take this off, boom, take this off, boom, no big deal. This upper barrel actually unscrews from this portion of the tube. So this barrel, which goes all the way through, is pressed in. So I don't recommend popping the pressing out because it will make it a little bit more loose. But everything holds it all together. And so as we assemble this, you'll kind of see how it all works. This has a gap in it. See? So it has to go over the small part of the barrel, and then it gets pressed into place like this. So then you have your holes align right there. Cool. And then your upper piece is going to go on this way. It's just going to lay right on top like so. And all of that is going to be held together. So you can kind of see why I left this black, because it's going to coordinate beautifully with the black camo. Now we're just going to throw on these pick rails. And the pick rails and these screws dual purpose because they actually are holding the upper and lower together, which is perfect. There we go. Again, nice and snug, make sure it's solid, it holds everything in place, but don't over tighten. So over tightening, you can, you're working with softer metals here. You over tighten, you can strip it, or maybe even worse, you can strip the threading out on these tiny little screws, and then getting them out is no fun at all. I actually bought a specialized micro reversal tool set just for goat guns because the screws are notorious for stripping when you take them apart. So there you go. I really love the build of the AK12. This thing feels so good too. Alrighty, I'm just going to put this together. Actually, you know what? Let's hold off. We're going to put this together in just a minute. We're going to do that in a minute because I still have a couple of small pieces and it'll be easier to handle without them. All right. Let's get the trigger dropped in. Remember, there's a spring attached. It stays on there pretty good, but we want to make sure that there's no issues. I probably should have put the latch on afterwards, but I think it'll be okay. Just lining the trigger back up with a hole. Getting it perfectly lined up is the hardest part. Not difficult, just got to get it. There we go, nice and in. That's it. And go a little tap tap. You want to make sure it's flush. There you go. Most of these don't take a lot to put in. The trigger's in, trigger mechanism, nice and easy. All down in there. And then the mag release, which isn't, again, not hard, but a little tricky. All right, so what I'm attempting here, which is still a pain in the ass, is I have a piece of a zip tie. I'm just trying to get the spring to line up on the inside. All right, pull the zip tie out. Okay, it's in. Whew. Okay, So this is entertaining for real. I'm getting it all the way through with the pressure of the spring. Ladies and gentlemen, officially the hardest part I've done in a long time. That spring is no joke, but we are in. And as you can see, taking it apart is not one I would recommend. So there you go. Going forward, I may just paint that bad boy right where it is. Man, that was a lot. Okay. Cool. Everything else is so much easier comparatively. So let's see. We've got our grip to put on, and then we'll put on the front end, and we're good to go. All right, let's get this grip on. Gotta get this little guy in the slot. The hardest part about this is holding multiple pieces. But we're gonna see if we can't get this to go up in the hole. There we go. So you need to get that started first. And then we're gonna lay this right on top in hopes that we can capture it all together. Okay, make sure it's snug. There we go. Okay, that's a little challenging. You just got to make sure that you get the screw set first. If you have a really good long magnetic screwdriver, sometimes you can find it, but you know, it's a tiny space and it's dark in there. So you got to have just the right light, and then you're trying to find that little, yeah, it's a lot. Anyway, so that works just fine. Alrighty. Go ahead and put this together. And we're gonna get both of our pins started. Just gotta kind of help it line up a little bit. The second one goes in just fine. This is definitely one of the more challenging ones, which is what I was saying before. There's a lot of extra parts. It's bigger, it's heavier. And depending on how far you're going to take it down is really going to depend on the level of difficulty. So I'm just, probably sounds like I'm smashing the crap out of it, but I'm not. I'm just very gently tapping it so that I can get everything level because I want them flush. Whew. Okay. I'm going to tighten this up just a hair now. And that's good. And we got this on. Pull this out. Gonna get that on there. Get the rest of our parts here. Dust cover. It's also substantially bigger, which is kind of funny. I want this to line up. There we go. Line up just like that. Go down in the pocket. There we go. Sweet. Now, you got your extra parts in here to finish your locking mechanism right there. But otherwise, there you go. We got our gold and black and dark gray AK fully assembled. Sweet. Okay, so thanks for sticking this one out. This was definitely a challenging assembly. The hardest part, for sure, is this mag release. And I literally just used a piece of zip tie that fit in there nice and snug so it stay in place. And all that really did was force the spring up into the channel so that I could get that pin in properly, which worked out great. Still a pain in the ass, but it worked out really nicely. So, but there you go. Hope you like it. Again, thanks for watching the videos. Thanks for sticking with me. Please let me know if you have any questions or you run into your own challenges. I have actually had some people say, well, hey, I did this and this worked really well. And of course, I'm a fan of learning from others as well. But I do these to try to help folks out so they can see each piece in case they are, thinking about taking it down. And I recommend it. I recommend playing with it. I recommend taking your time. If you're going to paint it and you really want it to look clean in the way that it's supposed to, you need to take it all the way down to do that. But there are ways to do it without. And all I want to do is give you the opportunity to learn and experiment on your own. Thanks again for watching. If you are interested in the camo kits, let me know. I should have my website up soon. They'll be available there. These are also available on eBay. And I'll be doing some camo kits, some different patterns and whatnot as well. Stay tuned. Thanks again. Thanks for being awesome.